Hey guys, all the red bud trees in my area are in bloom. Aren't they gorgeous? They start out with a red bud and then when it opens up it's this bright purple. It is so stunning. I'm really enjoying my neighbor's tree here. Isn't that gorgeous? Looks like all of our rose bushes, these are my husband's roses. They're kind of a shrub rose. They've all come back from being dormant over the winter. They've busted out with leaves. It's funny, this one is the best looking one out of the whole small hedge here. But I've been busy putting some things aside for my sister's new garden. She bought a home in Delaware and the backyard is a completely empty slate. So I have been growing cuttings and putting things together for her garden. I have some daylilies and some sedum cuttings, and I have this euonymus, I think it's fortunite, which is a bright chartreuse green. Look at that, isn't that gorgeous? 3 little boxwoods. Everything is really small, of course, because they were taken from cuttings. And then this is a Japanese euonymus. I was going to topiary these, but they keep wanting to grow into bushes, so I figure I may as well give them to her. I think they would be beautiful in her garden. It wouldn't be spring if I didn't show you my violas. I'm particularly loving the ones with the orange and the purple. I think that's the combination I like the best. So pretty. And all of my topiaries are downright shaggy. Look at that, guys. It's going to be time for a prune. I don't want to do it, though, before any cold snaps are finished. So I may wait a couple more weeks on that. But look how big these were little tiny cuttings that I took a couple years ago. Now they're getting quite substantial. Really excited about that. Here's a little update on my geraniums that came out of dormancy. They've leafed out beautifully. It's a little chilly out here this morning for them. I brought them out for some sunshine, but they've been up in the polytunnel. And I moved everything in last night because, again, temperatures are dipping down into the 30s. For a couple of nights, so I do still have to move all my seedlings and cuttings in and out, but I just wanted to give you an update on how well all of my geraniums did that came out of dormancy. These are the ones that were in a paper bag about a month ago and lived there all winter. Now they're leafing out again. I've got a little tub of Japanese maple seedlings, and sometimes I'm successful growing them up into bigger trees, so we'll see. I put a lot of clay soil in there and sand and some potting soil, and I just went around the base of my big Japanese maple and spotted these little seedlings. So we'll see how they do. And I'm bringing out my tomato seedlings to get some sunshine. I do also have some green beans started, a couple of marigolds over here, and these have been up in the polytunnel for the last week, but I have had to bring them in the last couple nights. It's a little bit too chilly for tomatoes and summer crops, so for the most part they're transitioning outside, but I do still have to bring them in on those chilly nights. I have actually managed to grow some radishes this year, and it looks like they're bulbing up. I want to show you how big they're getting. Look at the size of that one. Aren't they great? I have some white ones too. Let me show you how those are doing. I've got turnips over here. And then I have white globe radish, and they look like they're getting really big. I think the key is putting it in either some peat moss or cocoa coir. This was cocoa coir, and I think they need, just very, very fine soil so there's no resistance as they make those roots, which of course are the radishes. So I may have to transplant out the turnips. They might need more space than this, but pretty soon I'll be harvesting these beautiful white radishes. I'm really excited. I've never really had a radish harvest before, and I think I'm going to let one of these go to seed. A couple days ago I cleaned out my triangle garden. This garden, I have simplified it. I'm going to have tomatoes along the back where the deck railing is, and of course all of the daffodil foliage will die back, and I've scattered some zinnia seeds around it. It might be too early to have done that, but I'm planning on having all zinnias throughout there in front of my tomatoes. And then actually a couple months ago I transplanted some little boxwoods across the front, and behind that I have about 4 different salvia. And the only thing I added to the pink garden were the spider plants that I hung up. And if it's a cold night, I can just take it back to the polytunnel. But guys, I have a rabbit that I keep finding in my polytunnel. I think maybe she or he is moving in. We did see it being chased by a fox the other day, so maybe that's where it feels safe. My chive border on the polytunnel bed has come up looking beautiful. Love to see that spring green. And some of them have some flower buds forming here. So that'll be nice. Beautiful purple chive flowers will show up, and then it will turn to seed. So what I'll probably do is divide some of these larger clumps and fill in between. I'd really like to have, you know, a straight border all the way across the front. And any alliums or chives are good to have in front of any vegetable plants because animals really don't like the scent of them. They prefer to stay away from onions and chives. And then in here, I think these are, I believe these are daikon radish. We'll see. So I put those out here when it was still pretty cold. Obviously only one made it over here. But I have my parsley coming up. And some of my snap peas, they're pretty slow growing. Every time it gets warm, they do put on a little bit more height, but it's pretty slow growing. I'm hoping I get some before the heat of summer comes in. These are some sweet, later blooming daffodils. Aren't they pretty? They're like little clusters of yellow blooms. Multiples on top of the stem. I love them. I moved them here from another spot, and I think they'll really like it. It's a nice sunny location for them. My rustic garden bed has kind of become a catch-all bed for all the things I've been moving around. I did move those daffodils from another spot, and I put some of them back here, and I'm really liking it. Gives the rustic garden bed some interest in the spring. I really didn't have any spring blooming flowers except for the one primrose which came back, and I can show you over here. It's really beautiful. It's a gorgeous pinky red with a yellow center. I love it. And I cut back some of the thyme. It was looking very leggy. Not looking so great after the winter, but I chopped it all back and put a little bit of garden soil around it, and now it seems to be springing back more. And it looks like my Sweet William is putting on some blooms. It's gonna those are all gonna be flowers, all those little fluffy parts in the center. So that looks like it'll do well. And all of the chives, which I split up and put around this bed, have come up beautifully. Tufts of green coming up. So they've all come up. I have a couple over there next to the border. So this is basically my flower bed and my herb bed. And I've got some oregano plants really filling out down here. And this was my variegated thyme, also looking quite terrible after the winter. But I'm hoping with a prune and some extra garden soil around it, it'll come back. They actually don't like heavy fertilizing, but I figure a little nice soil around it in the spring is a good idea. And I'm excited to see that a couple of my agastache plants here, this one and this one over here, have come back. I grew those from seed last year, so I'm hoping they grow nice and big and really establish themselves. They smell really nice in the garden, and they're supposed to be a hummingbird's favorite. I think butterflies like them as well. And only one of them made it down here. This is a shadier edge of the garden, so only one of them made it over there. It's kind of right there. So I have one at this end and two at the other end. I have some more oregano. And this is columbine coming up, which does fine. Last year I made an effort, other than the Sweet William, which seems to do okay, I did make an effort to put more shade tolerant plants at this end, because this is the shady end of the bed. And so I put some coral bells here. I think they're called Dale's Choice coral bells. So I put those here, and of course the columbine is shade tolerant. They're a nice flower for the woods. And then I moved a sea holly here. It's looking quite terrible. Right here, I moved that from the triangle bed. It never did well. Looks like someone tried to dig it up. A squirrel, perhaps. But it never did well, so I moved it back here. We'll see how it does back here. And then here's a close-up. Oh, so here's the difference between my chives. So garlic chives look like grass. They're flat. They have a flat leaf. And then regular chives have a round leaf. So I have some of each around the garden. And it's nice to have for cooking. Both of them are nice. Really nice to use in cooking. And then, I don't know if I showed you this, but I did plant artichokes that I grew from seed. I have 3 of them back here. They're under the baskets because of the rabbit. And they're being protected. But I planted them, and it's quite early to plant them, so I hope they will be okay. I can always come out here with a plastic cloche on the really cold evenings. It's not hard to cover up 3 little plants, but so far so good. They've been in the ground for over a week, and they've dealt with some fluctuating temperatures. I happen to think kale flowers are gorgeous. You can eat them, especially when they're first starting to form. They're almost like broccoli. You can eat the flower stalks, but I think they're beautiful, and I think they give the pollinators some early pollen. I just think they're beautiful in the garden. And when they go to seed, I think I'm just going to sprinkle the seed throughout my kale bed. I did plant up some of the seedlings that I grew this year, because we didn't have a lot of survivors through the winter. Just about 5 or 6 plants, as you can see, survived the winter. Here's a good long view of the rustic garden bed, which is coming to life. I decided to put some peppers back here. These are orange lunchbox peppers, and it's way too early to plant peppers. But so far so good. Last night was pretty cold, and the leaves aren't in perfect shape, but they're still perfect, perky looking, and I think they're going to be okay. Again, I can come out here with a couple of buckets and cover them up if they're not happy, or if I think it's really going to be too cold. But this is going to be a pepper bed. And then we have Egyptian walking onions all around the edges here. Here's some more Egyptian walking onions in here. They seem to really like these tubs of soil. There's a few more daikon radishes coming up back here. And I'm excited to see, I've had these for a few years now, and it's the first time they've put on flowers. These are my currants. think these are golden currants. And they're actually black once they grow, but they're called golden currants because of the beautiful golden colored flowers. So I'm hoping that if all of those flowers get pollinated, this middle bush is going to give me some currants this year. We'll have to see. We'll keep an eye on that. The peony plants across the front here have come up really well this year. This is as big as they've gotten. So maybe this year they'll be mature enough to make some flowers. We'll have to see. I've never had flowers on them before. I've been waiting on a lot of small plants to get large enough to produce some flowers. Only one collared plant survived the winter, and it has put out blooms, so maybe I'll collect seed from that if it puts off some seed. Now it's a possibility that it might mix with the kale if the pollinators are going to both flowers, so we'll have to see what the seed produces. At any rate, I'm sure it will be a wonderful green. But I did plant a few more kale down here, and that was a couple weeks ago, and it seems to have really taken off in these raised bins. These are my old recycle bins, and they seem to really like that setup. So they should grow up nice and tall back there. This is a view I'm liking more and more. I did a little repotting back here of my baby Japanese maples. And I sprinkled a little alyssum seed around all of them. This is probably, I think it's the white alyssum. It kind of looks like white mounding snow once it grows and blooms. So I put alyssum around the bottom of all of those. Here's a spot of chartreuse green. I think this is a type of sedum that really isn't supposed to come back from year to year. But it did. It must be a nice little sheltered spot right there next to the fence. But it's coming back, and it's sort of spreading itself along. It's just beautiful. It was a container plant one year, and I think I dumped out the container dirt right there, and look what happened. It just grew. It was happy, so it just grew. All of the lily of the valley is coming up throughout here, and my potted plants are coming back to life. Looks like my Japanese maple here, this one I discovered out front and put in a pot. It looks like it's put on another foot of growth, so I'm excited about that. And here's a gorgeous magnolia tree, a very old specimen hanging over my fence. I get to enjoy all these beautiful blooms. It's just beautiful. And magnolias have beautiful foliage too, but it's looking fantastic. So thanks so much for joining me. I hope you're enjoying your spring gardens. And I'll see you next time.